concern about keeping a conservative, balanced, and structurally balanced budget, and it has to do with the fact that the House does not pay for the school funding changes that they have proposed. They've made a series of policy changes that they don't pay for. I mean, sure, they put $50 million and $130 million additional money into the formula, but their education funding proposal, you're all familiar with the concept of the cap. Essentially, we have a foundation. Last year we had the cap, and it was, frankly, it was a mistake then, and it's a mistake now, to basically adopt a formula that you cannot pay for, and essentially then withhold money from those districts for whom the formula said should get money. The House plan withholds $1 billion, just under, in fiscal year 16. It withholds $750 million in FY17. I mean, essentially, policy choices were made in order to make the printout look better, to allow them to distribute money to some districts, but then withhold it from others. And so, look, these very substantial, essentially promises of aid. In fact, the House calls it future formula aid. They use a new terminology. Essentially promises this money. This is going to put tremendous stress on future budgets. I mean, where are we going to come up with that kind of money? We're going to have to find some additional revenue to support that. Or we're going to have to make reductions in other places. I mean, if the House wants to spend this kind of money, they should have made some reductions to the as part of their plan. You know, there's one of two things going to happen. We are going to have substantial out-year challenges to deliver this money to the schools, or the schools are not actually going to get this money that's being promised to them in the out years. And neither of those are really desirable outcomes. You know, now the governor's budget, we capped out some dollars in the governor's plan. But again, we had a glide path out and away from caps by dramatically increasing the caps, as this chart shows. You know, our ability to say that we can grow our way out of this in the foreseeable future is highly questionable. So again, what does this chart show? On the far left, it essentially shows the capped amounts. I mean, this basically shows both guarantees and caps. But the red is the capped or unfunded amount. In 14 and 15, you can see that we had not insignificant caps. The governor's plan moved to reduce those. The House increases them above the governor's level, and frankly above the level that was capped out in the budget of 2 years ago. I mean, there might be a case for some sort of cap over a very brief period as you're transitioning. But, you know, this has the look of something that's going to be with us for a long time to me, and that is not desirable. So, you know, this is a major, the large caps in the House version of the budget bill are a substantial concern to the governor and to me.
But they actually reduced the caps, so why do you say large caps?
What do you mean they reduced the caps? Oh, well, now, what I'm talking about is the total amount of money withheld by the cap.
Okay.
Not necessarily the cap size, because you know, a lower cap percentage, 7.5%, actually withholds more money, and in part drives up the amount that is withheld. So my focus is not on the level of the cap itself, be it 10 or 7.25. It's the resulting money that is not paid. I mean, the big issue is that they have made policy choices that they cannot pay for. And so it is capped. They basically write a cap and withhold it.
And you've said that they've doubled the number of school districts that bump up against the cap.
Yes, that's right. That's right. And I have, it is my I believe, by our calculations, they have capped 408 districts in the second year. In the first year, we had 204. We had 130 in this, I'm sorry, that was 16 I just gave you. In 17, we had 130 subject to the cap. They have 328.
You say this is setting up a situation where it's funding you can't pay for, but wouldn't, if this were to go through, wouldn't they just cap it again in the next 2-year budget and in an effort to maybe shrink that number but not pay for it all, and then over time, let's just say they continue a 7.5% cap, wouldn't that eventually phase them off the cap?
It sounds like a plausible theory, but I believe that the events of the last week show, I mean, look to this chart, they show that that's not the case. Because we worked very hard. I mean, we made policy choices that helped drive the cap downward and get districts off the cap. But the results were such that they were unacceptable to the members of the House. And so they made a whole series of policy changes to change the outcome of the formula that cost a whole lot of money, that drove the caps back up. I am concerned that that is the pattern that we will see, that you can assert that we will work our way off the caps in some period of time, but when we get to 2 years from now and people attempt to make those restrained policy choices, that the outcome of the formula's distribution is going to be such that the schools don't like it and therefore the members don't like it. I mean, if you were willing to make the hard choices and phase out guarantees and target resources toward the least capacity districts, and if folks were willing to tolerate a printout that had negative numbers on it, Jim, you could possibly grow your way out. But I see no evidence, based on the activity of the last week, that that's a likely outcome in the future. Because again, on the guarantee, we had a very modest proposal to begin to let the formula work to allow some modest reductions in school aid if circumstances were warranted, because they had fewer kids or because their capacity was increasing. And the House went back to a 100% guarantee against FY15 levels. We had a proposal to phase out the tangible personal property tax aid, which is targeted, which is generally distributed to higher capacity districts, and free up those dollars to distribute through the formula for those districts with lower capacity. And the House added a supplemental TPP guarantee so no one would lose money.